Apparently this whole week is going to be horror films. Based on the novel by Stephen King, Pet Sematary is a 2019 horror film that follows Dr. Lewis Creed, played by Jason Clarke, who moves to rural Maine with his wife and 2 children in tow. There he discovers a mysterious burial ground hidden deep in the woods near the family's new home, called the Pet Sematary. When tragedy strikes, Lewis turns to his unusual neighbor Judd Crandall, played by John Lithgow, setting off a perilous chain reaction that unleashes an unfathomable evil with horrific consequences. So I remember when I was a kid, a friend of mine was trying to get me to watch the old movie in 1989, and I checked it out, and I checked out. I wasn't a big fan of it. It was immediately boring to me. I couldn't grasp the concept. It just didn't make sense. I didn't know why I was watching it. I was hoping that some good could come out of a modernized version of it. I know that it's a remake. I know that it's an adaptation. I do like Stephen King to a degree. Some things work for me, some things don't, and I was hoping to see the best out of this interpretation. Let's get into it. One of the things that's important to note about the people category is that the characters themselves aren't that bad. You could see that they were definitely developed in a way that is positive. Most of the characters have a history, and most of the characters have a reason for being there. Except for Jason Clarke. Jason Clarke basically just exists as the conduit for the story to progress. Even though I'd say the characters were developed pretty well, I didn't care too much about the casting, especially with Jason Clarke and even John Lithgow. And I love John Lithgow and a lot of stuff that he's in. I just didn't feel like his role was perfect here. I liked his character. I didn't like him so much in it, which is a weird thing to say. And especially because this focuses on a family, I just didn't feel that family chemistry that you would normally feel with a lot of other movies. No, it's not a family-friendly film, but it is a family, and families should have specific chemistry, and they don't in this movie. 10 out of 20 possible stars, 50%. As far as writing goes, I'd say it's a slow start. It takes a while to get to where it's trying to get to. Like I said, the real plot of the movie probably doesn't even show up until the 3rd act. Before that, it has a lot of introductions to the characters. It has an introduction to the Pet Sematary. It has introduction to what the Pet Sematary is and what it can do and all these different things. The real plot, what actually happens after that, doesn't really happen until the 3rd act. But because I've never seen the original movie, because I've never read the book, there are aspects of this film that really did truly feel original. And I also found this, as a whole, more interesting than whatever I saw when I was a kid. Maybe I'm just older and my tastes have changed. I'm not entirely sure. I couldn't tell you for sure. 7 out of 10 possible stars for writing. Behind the scenes, nothing really shouts out to me, but editing was specifically pretty good when it came down to transitions. There's a lot of different scenes that take place in different areas that collide, and when they collide, there's these juxtaposition, I don't even know how you say that word, transitions that work really well for the movie, that look nice, but that's specifically an editing thing, which is why I gave that full points. Everything else is pretty average, pretty typical, 7 out of 10 possible stars for the BTS. As a whole, the narrative structure was done pretty well. The only thing that I would mention is the obstacles. Like I said, the plot doesn't really arrive until the 3rd act, so it's a lot of blah, 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 blah. 3rd act, finally we have a plot, finally we have a story, finally we have objectives, and we don't have that really until then, and because of that, that got half points. Everything else is pretty good. Like I said, lots of introduction into everything, character, story. There's a very clear inciting incident, good climax, good falling action, good everything. 9 out of 10. As far as entertainment goes, I would say it's decent. It's not everything that it could be. It's not just perfectly entertaining. It's just decent. I'm not against rewatching it. I probably would later on down the road. It's just not my cup of tea, so I'm probably not going to watch it right away. There are areas in this movie that you really do have a good time with, but other areas that takes a little bit longer time than it probably should to get where it's going, and those times are just boring. But as far as being engaging and riveting, that's where this film thrives. There's enough happening in this movie that makes you feel like you can't pause it, can't look away, can't go to the bathroom because something important's going to happen, something exciting's going to happen, something is going to happen. Even if it doesn't actually happen, you feel as if it will. And because of that, it is engaging. I will give that full points. 4 out of 10 possible stars. The specialty category, what do you expect to see out of Pet Sematary? Being that it is a Stephen King story, how does it do? I know it's probably one of his more famous stories. I don't care that much for it though. I think in the long run it's gonna get lost among the others. I would probably just give 5 out of 10 for this. Next, adaptation. Does it feel like a book or does it feel like a movie? In this regards, I absolutely say it feels like a book, which is not a good thing. I truly believe that a movie should feel separate from a book. You shouldn't be able to tell that all this information came from a novel, and for the most part, because there's so much information that they throw in the movie for exposition or whatever, it just feels like it definitely came out of a book. I do see that as a negative. I'm going to give this 0 out of 10. Horror. Is this movie scary? I went back and forth with this a lot. I didn't know if I could consider this scary or not, because the main things that make this scary are jump scares. People have different opinions on jump scares, on if they are cheap, meaningless, not actually scary, or whatever. But scary is a very, very subjective word. Jump scares work for some people. It might be short-lived, it might be shallow, but it does scare them, and that's important. I can tell when a jump scare is coming, don't get me wrong, but that's how I know to look away, to cover my eyes, to look through my fingers. No, you're not gonna have nightmares. No, you're not gonna be sitting in the theater for a few minutes trying to compose yourself. It's not that kind of scary. It doesn't make you think. It's just shallow, it's in the moment, and in the moment counts too in certain regards. I'm gonna say 5 out of 10 for this. Halfway decent. Did they make the movie that they intended to make from the get-go? I believe they did. It's not really my cup of tea, but I could see a lot of people really digging what this movie was going for. So I'm gonna give this 10 out of 10. So the specialty category gets 20 out of 40 possible stars. That's 50%. If we add up all those points, we get 57 out of 100 possible stars, 57%. Now, it depends on what school you go to for this, but this is either a D- or an F. Guys, tell me what you thought of Pet Sematary in the comments down below, and as for YouTube, you know you can subscribe to me, hit that bell to be notified when I come out with my next review, and until next time, guys, peace out!